Welcome back again to On Point. Well, week by week, day by day, minute by minute, and even with the Trump administration, second by second, new dramas unfold. It's exhausting. But while we deal with COVID 19 and we deal with the issues of race and injustice, Black Lives Matter, there's a whole world of activity that still exists out there. There are other challenges, there are other problems. I just want to divert our attention this week to some other things going on and that we touched upon a few weeks ago, and that's the issue of human trafficking, specifically in the African American community. I'm joined again once again by Wincey Terry Bryant, who's the head of Traffic Jam, and she just does wonderful, wonderful work. And I wanted to continue our discussion on this because this is very, very important. Welcome back to On Point, Wincey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back, Julian.
We'd mentioned the last time we talked, and it just seemed like the time went by so quick that I had to bring you back, that the whole instance of human trafficking in the African American community is a very, very big thing, and we really couldn't get our hands around all of it. People don't know, or a lot of people don't know, that human trafficking in the African American community is a dilemma. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. So wherever there is poverty, there is a proclivity for trafficking. Traffickers take the opportunity to do that wherever they see vulnerabilities. And so in our communities, people are thinking that it's the white vans with the double locks. Some of it is that, but some of it is a very strategic procedure that traffickers use. Sometimes in-house trafficking is occurring. So most of the trafficking that happens by people, you know.
So in other words, it's not just a thing where like men and women, boys and girls are just disappearing. They can exist in families and households, but there's like another dark side. There's another life that they're leading that a lot of people or most folk would never even think or know or imagine.
Absolutely. Many people say that they, the first time they were sold by an uncle or by their mother or by, sometimes people are selling people for food. There's a lot of food insecurity going on in our neighborhoods. And rent, people sell their children because they can't make rent. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Well, I just want to make it clear, though, and you mentioned this, we talked about some of the numbers and you kind of disputed them. Basically, that, is this any more prevalent in communities of color, specifically the African American community, or is it more an economic-based thing where you find, as you mentioned at the top of the show, poverty?
Yes, so it's a poverty-based and motivated industry. Mm-hmm. And so traffickers do not necessarily target people because of their color. They are non-discriminatory. So they will traffic anybody who has a vulnerability. So yes, it's happening in our community, but it's happening in other communities too.
All right. There's been a downswing in a number of things as a result of COVID-19. You're talking about transmission of a disease. Can you tell us, has COVID-19 affected the prevalence of human trafficking over the past 3 to 4 months?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because a lot of people felt like, since there was people believe that trafficking is like the moving or the transferring of people from one place to another, and that's not necessarily the case. They also believe that because people were quarantined, they could not go out to be trafficked. But what we learned as a result of our research, and I'm the arts co-chair for the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking, we just did a big press release on how traffickers are still finding ways to traffic their victims, even in quarantine. So one of the things that they're doing is they are setting victims up as if they are delivery persons. So Julian, you might call for food, and I would have the license, quote unquote, to be on the road because I'm bringing you food, when really a trafficker has given me a package of food, but what I'm selling when I get there is my body. So there's a lot of that going on. And then there's a tremendous amount of grooming. So because children have increased their online activity because all the learning is happening online, and just from, strictly from boredom, people are online now. Traffickers have increased their online presence so that they could groom these children, make friends with them, desensitize them, and program them so that once they are able to come back out in the street, they feel like, oh, I made a new friend. Julian is my 17-year-old friend that I met playing some video game, and now we're going to meet up. And that's what's happening now.
You know, it's amazing. Evil has no bounds. And they say where you have a more deviant mouse, you have to build a better mousetrap.
Right.
You know, and it's really exhausting as far as I can tell. I don't know how in the world you deal with all this because it's so much. So you obviously have to have a passion for it. Let's talk about the kind of candidate. We know that you've got poor and disenfranchised kids, you know, boys and girls, I guess men and women on top of that too. You have folks, of course, with kids now being at home and on the internet, and they're quarantined for the most part, that they're bored. So therefore, you know, they may be more prone to this kind of activity. If you are a human trafficker, outside of that, what specifically are you looking for? How do you detect the vulnerability of a child, a boy or a girl?
Oh, great. That's a great question too, because parents are always asking, like, how can I tell if my child is a quote unquote target? So traffickers look for children, first of all. There are 27 million adults and 13 million children currently in the trafficking industry. So they're currently victims of trafficking. And what these traffickers do is they befriend children. So they look for insecurities. We, even as adults, if we post something, we go back to see if anybody liked our post, how many posts we have, you know, how many people liked our post. Well, what they do is they try to connect with these people, young people, finding some kind of commonality or something they like, oh, that was a really cool hat you had on. Oh, I love those sneakers too. Oh, that was a great dress you had on, or I loved your post, that kind of thing. So they're looking for people that they can quote unquote befriend. And then they look every place. So schools are targets, school grounds are targets. They have a technique they call use a slave to catch a slave. So kids in schools are hired to indoctrinate other children, to invite them into trafficking situations. Sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. They look in homes. So they look for homes where if you have a parent who's working all the time, or you're a latchkey kid, if you're always spending time alone. So they look at homes. They look in malls, because that's where all the kids go now. They hang out in the malls. And then they set up places like fake massage businesses, residential brothels. So apartments are repurposed to be places where people can be bought and sold. Streets, truck stops, very, very popular. Hotels, motels. And that's why it's happening like right under our noses. And that's why I'm so grateful for you to have this conversation, because a lot of people think that I'm talking about, you know, foreign countries. Are you talking about Africa, India? But it's happening right here, and it's happening in our local towns, New York, New Jersey. They're constantly busting up human trafficking rings now.
You know, I'm scratching my head, Wincey, about this. Maybe I'm just that old of a dog. I don't know, or maybe I just wasn't aware. But, you know, I don't recall myself specifically hearing about this, you know, when I was a kid, or knowing anybody who might have been a part of this, who were victimized or anything. Is human trafficking in the age of higher technology more prevalent than it was, say, in the 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s?
Excellent question. You ask the best questions, because it is more prevalent, because it's easier to traffic people now, because the internet puts everybody in everybody's living room. So while trafficking is age old, it's as old as, you know, everybody used to think it was prostitution.
Right.
But there's a distinction between it, and it has been around forever. But what makes the process accessible to anyone now is the internet. And then what they have under the internet is the dark web. So the dark web is where people can go on and you can search just like you would search now. If you wanted to buy a bike, you could search on the dark web. I want to buy a little boy. I want to buy a little girl. I want to buy somebody from the LGBTQ community.
Well, let me stop you there for a second. And that's the point, the dark web. If you go on the dark web,
yes,
is that monitored in any way? Like, say, for instance, somebody goes on their computer to look up child porn. I thought that there was some sort of methodology where, the feds or authorities could see what you're doing and then intercept that kind of stuff. There's no way that can be intercepted if you go on the dark web, that people in authority or positions would know about this.
Well, they go there. So the authorities go on the dark web, but it's a process. They can't just go on and like go into the room and bust somebody, chat room and bust somebody. They have to follow the process all the way up to like just before the act. So we have, like I said, I'm on the coalition, and we have some FBI consultants and survivor consultants, and they talk about, and we have a police agency that works along with us. It tells us how they go onto the dark web and how they follow this procedure. But there is a procedure, and if you do it prematurely, then you don't actually catch somebody in the act. But sure, anybody, sadly enough, can go into these rooms and see the conversations, but you can't arrest somebody for a conversation. You have to then get a warrant and commandeer their computer and see if there's pornography on all those things. So
all right. Well, look, let's drive this ship on home here.
Yeah.
And I want you to. I know it's exhausting. You're sweating. You run a marathon.
Yeah. I always break out in a sweat when I'm talking about it. It's very upsetting.
Absolutely, no, without a doubt. So, what do we do? How do we prophylactically prevent our people, our kids, from becoming involved in this? What can people do to combat this?
So one of the things that we need to do is education is the precursor to the protection. People need to have a conversation about this. And like you're doing, people need to talk to their children. It needs to be as common as telling your children to look both ways before you cross the street. Parents need to have the relationship, foster the relationship, secure and cultivate a relationship with their children that makes them the loudest voice in their ear and makes the children know that it's safe to come to me and it doesn't matter what you've done.
Right.
They also need to monitor the children's activity. They're one of the ways that traffickers are connecting with these children is on their cell phone and on these apps, these the TikTok apps and all these other apps that you can hide on your phone. And the kids are very smart because the children are digital natives, so they're very tech savvy. They know how to hide these apps. Parents need to exercise their parental right to take the phone and click on every app and have it open up and see what their children are doing. It's really the only way you're going to be able to protect them from mature and savvy manipulating, minds.
Right.
Then you can volunteer. So my organization is trafficjam.info, and you can volunteer to be at events, to work the table at events, to pass out literature. Something as simple as sharing a post about a stat about human trafficking can help raise awareness for people to help them see that it is actually happening here. Things like that would make a big difference.
We're about out of time here. We probably have gone over. Our producer, Liz Black, is probably going to kill me, but I've got to ask this one question because I don't think that I did. And we're going to close with this. If you can tell me briefly, how did you get involved?
Great question. So I am a singer-songwriter, and my alma mater, which is Benedictine Academy, a school in Elizabeth, asked me to come back and teach the girls songwriting for the campus ministry project. And when I came back and asked them what song, like what was the topic was human trafficking, and I had never heard of it. And when the girls started giving me the stats, the youngest person in the system is 2 years old, oldest person 76 years old, and it happens right here in New Jersey, New York, hot spots for human trafficking because of our major highways. And that's how they take the girls and boys and move them around and up and down the coast so that they are out of the purview of the police officers in their local towns. It blew my mind. And I said, you know what? Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. And that's when I said, I got to raise awareness. And I started this organization, Traffic Jam, which uses the performing arts to raise awareness. So I hire actors and we do skits and scenes and call and response songs where people can see it up on stage, because it's nothing like it when you see it. You know, you hear about it, you hear people talk about it, but when you see actors who look like teenagers get up there and get tricked and duped by doing something that you as a student in the audience would do yourself, and you know, you do all the time, it's mind-blowing. You see the light bulb come on for the kids.
Once again, before we close here, if you would give people your contact information, those who either want to get involved or who are dealing with this dilemma, what is that contact information again, Wincey?
Awesome. So contact me at info.trafficjam.info. So it's info@trafficjam.info, and traffic is with a K, TRAFFICK, jam like music, jam.
Right. And of course, at the symbol. Wincey Terry Bryan, a great conversation. It's kind of sobering just to a certain degree, but a much needed one. Thank you for coming on for the second time, and I'm sure that we'll be talking again.
Thank you so much, Julian. Thanks for having me.
You know, situations like this that you just wonder whether or not you would want to be a kid again. I wonder. There's so many things that young folks have to deal with today. You know, growing up, just dealing with the everyday pains of either being a teenager, health issues, of course, if you are a person of color, dealing with the police, navigating yourself through an educational system that might not be as good as others. And then, of course, you have this on top of drugs and substance abuse and all sorts of things. It just seems so daunting that it's just so great that we have organizations like Traffic Jam and people like Wincey Terry Bryan who are leading the fight to make sure that our people here that are existing in this world lead a better life. I'm trying to do the same thing with On Point, making sure that all of you are on point. Thank you for joining us and me for this edition, and we'll see you again next week.